Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm Sophia, assistant editor at the magazine. Before we get into it, I just want to put in a little plug to make sure you are subscribed to our print magazine if you're interested. We have a new issue coming out soon that I'm particularly excited about. We've been working really hard on it over here, and it's going to be one for the ages, as they say. So let's get into it. Today's episode is with guitarist Louis Campbell, who called in from across the pond. Louis and I initially got connected because he is currently on the road this year playing with the incredible newer artist Dove Ellis. But Louis has a great Fretboard Journal connection too, which is he talks in the episode about how he studied with the great Martin Simpson, who we featured recently in an issue of the magazine where we, really dove into his incredible guitar collection. So there's a lot we dive into in this episode. It's a good one if you're especially interested in kind of the intersection between trad music and popular music and how trad ideas, occur in modern folk today. But as always, before we get into it, the Fretboard Journal podcast is brought to you by a handful of great brands like Peghead Nation. For 10 years now, it's been the finest spot on the internet to become a better acoustic player. You can get your first month free or $20 off any annual subscription with the promo code FRETBOARD. We're also brought to you by Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar and Stringjoy Strings, which you can get 10% off on your first order at stringjoy.com with the promo code FRETBOARD. All right, enough of that. Here is my conversation with Louis Campbell. Okay, I think a good place to start, I usually like to start at the very beginning, but you have a Fretboard Journal connection in a way, so I think it would be good to start there, which is we recently did an article featuring Martin Simpson, the great guitarist, and you play with him. So could you talk a little bit about your relation to him?
Yeah, it's been a very lovely, long-standing thing, really. When I was 18 and went off to music college, after some wrangling with the head of classical guitar, he let me, the deal was as long as I got through all the classical guitar exams, I could go and have half my lessons with whoever I wanted outside of the college. So a fiddle player I play with called Sam Sweeney got me in contact with Martin. And for a few years after that, every couple of weeks, I'd get the train over from Manchester to Sheffield in the north of England and just go and hang out with Martin. And we'd talk about music and play lots of guitars, and he'd give me ridiculous stories from his time in America. And yeah, so I learned so much just being near him at that young age. And then I guess the first time we played together there was this big concert in London for what would have been Bert Jansch's 80th birthday at the Royal Festival Hall. And Martin asked me to play with him, which was really lovely. We did a couple of songs, and it was a very funny evening. So that was the first time we played together. And then, and then since then we've been doing a couple of his records, and we do lots of gigs with a cello player called Liz Hanks. And yeah, it's just a really lovely thing. It's so nice to be able to have such a close friendship and musical connection with someone that's he's done the whole thing and is still really pushing in his 70s, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, how would you say, those early lessons and now, playing with him has shaped your own playing?
I think he's just the main thing is he's just such a good example of someone that's really found their thing, and whatever music he brings that to, he's still totally playing like himself. So that would be a big one. And then I think he's got such a dedication to just tone and finding new sounds out of the acoustic guitar in not too much of a showboaty way, which I think can be quite rare. So that's definitely been a big thing. And I guess just finding his own way through mostly traditional music is just a great thing to sort of strive after. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about that you've found yourself in a lot of traditional folk circles with musicians who are considerably older than you. So I am curious, kind of going back to beginnings, is that where your musical education started, or what were you playing at first when you first picked up the guitar?
I guess it kind of was in some ways. My dad played the guitar always around the house. He mostly played flamenco and then was really into Davy Graham and Bert Jansch and a few of those like 60s folk guitar people. So that was always around. And then I started playing classical guitar when I was, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. And then when I was probably 12 or something, I used to go to this like Saturday music school thing for all the schools in the town where I grew up. And these two people came in playing Irish music. And it was just this amazing guitar player playing like the like big strummy dadgad Irish backing guitar, which was just something I'd never witnessed before. And there was like the dynamic of like a drum kit with it, and it was so like propulsive, and I found that really exciting. So that's kind of where I got into tunes music, and then spent my whole teenage years firstly playing loads of Irish music, and then discovering English music, and then some bluegrass and stuff afterwards. But yeah, so I think that was always like sort of the exploratory side of like learning music for me. I always did the classical guitar stuff alongside it, but so much of the like more like improvising based music I was doing, and like just anything to do with like trying to find your own way through something rather than just replicating something, was mostly through traditional music.
Cool. That's really cool. And I'm interested because I've talked to some young people on the podcast that it almost seems like, I wonder if this was the case for you, but like it almost seems like at a certain point, your taste, seemed like even older than your parents. Did that, like, that kind of sounds like what you're getting at too, is like you found some of this trad stuff on your own, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I suppose particularly in this country, a lot of people growing up playing folk music have like folk families. Very typical for everyone's like parents and grandparents to all be at like festivals and stuff together. And it wasn't that case for me. I think my family had a very healthy, like, they just found it really funny. They were like talking about people just like wearing sandals and being hippies and not washing properly at these folk festivals, which is sometimes accurate. So I think that was really nice. I think it was nice to find it on my own terms, and to then, I think that takes away some of the pressure of like what that's meant to mean, like holding a tradition. It could all be on what I wanted it to be and what I wanted to get out of it.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're discovering, these different styles in high school, who were some of the people that were touchstones for you in terms of your playing? Because at this point you have yet to meet someone like Martin Simpson, right? Like we're still in teenage years.
Yeah. I guess what were the big things? John Martin, who's more in the singer-songwriter world, but he was a big thing, and particularly of like how that music could start to edge into more experimental music. There's an amazing guitar player called Nick Jones, not to be confused with Nick Jonas.
I would not think that Nick Jonas of the Jonas Brothers was greatly influential to your trad playing.
But Nick Jones was incredible. He has just such a unique style and very, very percussive, and used very, very low tuning. So there was like lots of crazy extra things that he could do with his hands without hurting himself. That really created some cool stuff in a very unique way of taking traditional music in a new way. So that was definitely a big one. And I guess I think the big thing that really hit me was a band that plays Irish music called The Gloaming, who got quite big. And their piano player is called Thomas Bartlett. And just the way that he could be so minimal and subtle backing traditional music in a way that allowed like so much spaciousness around it, but also never like impeding on the rhythm of the tune. I think that was really, that was like a big moment for me. And I've sort of been like trying to chase that more sort of piano-y style of tune backing since then.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Chasing that?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what led me to mostly playing electric guitar with fiddle players. Just because the dynamic and the sustain you get just allows you to play way less notes, and you can leave stuff hanging and ringing in a much more pianistic way. And I often find just like the smaller you can start with something too. Like if you just like start, if you're going to play a tune like 5 times, and if you can start on the first time and just play like single notes for each chord change rather than a full chord, you have like so far to go dynamically, particularly if it's only 2 people playing, that it can just like make it a lot more powerful. And I guess just the dynamic of being able to play that quietly on an electric guitar at a volume where people can actually hear it, was something I was really drawn to. And I guess some of his like the way he used certain voicings to make what's essentially still just like chords 1, 4, and 5 very interesting, and to make it sound like really different from tune to tune, in what could very easily otherwise just be like often the same chords over and over again.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you take all of this kind of teenage self-discovery into college. You went to a music program. Can you talk a bit about your years there?
Yeah, I went to the RNCM, which is a music college in Manchester in the north of England. And I started off doing, well, like I said, mostly doing classical guitar, which I think was good. It was never like, I never went in being like, I'm going to be a classical guitar player.
It's good for the foundations.
It was good for the foundations, and I think it was good for someone that, I think because it was like the classical guitar department, such like a weird little like side hustle to the strings department in any music college, that it, for someone that like doesn't necessarily fit into a box of like a program that would make lots of sense, I think it really worked for me in terms of being able to shape it to what I did want to do and get out of it what I wanted to get out of it. So I was there. It was a 4-year course. The main 2 years of COVID were the second 2 years, which was good and bad. It meant it sort of cut off lots of the playing with people, which was very rubbish, but also meant that like I just suddenly had loads of time to like really get the most out of the classical guitar stuff I could at that time, and just do lots and lots of practice really. And then by my 3rd year, I've sort of got to the point where I felt like I'd got what I wanted to out of the classical guitar stuff in terms of the technique and mostly just like the approach to tone and like trying to make a nice sound and a unique sound. So then I transferred onto their popular music course, where my teacher was a guy called Stuart McCallum, who some people might know from the Cinematic Orchestra, or he's in a band called The Breath as well, and he's amazing. And he comes from a jazz background, but was never like pushing jazz down my throat. It was like very healthy. It was like learning lots of the like fretboard harmony stuff that you'd want to learn from jazz, but always like with the question of what's this going to mean to you, and why are you learning it, and how can this be useful and apply to creating the music that you want to make and the feelings that you want to make, rather than just, you know, shredding over all the things you are or whatever. So yeah, I think I had a really good time. It was a kind of a strange 4 years, but I'm pleased I did it. And I think from like within my group of friends, I think anyone that leaves with a vaguely positive account of their time at music college probably meant it went pretty well.
Oh God, vaguely meaning it went well. Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about your move from the one course to the other, because it feels like understanding that gets at a lot of like the kind of music you would make after college, and also kind of the projects you're playing in now. So I'm not sure exactly how to formulate this, but like, yeah, what did you get out of switching to popular music? You know, what was a relief about it? And also, what kind of stuff were you bringing into the popular music course from the classical course?
Yeah, good question. So when I moved onto that course, it was also the start of a new course that Mostly Stuart had written, which just did a really like well considered job of like thinking about all the different roles you play as a musician in the modern world. So it meant I could do a lot more composition, which I really enjoyed. And yes, and then what they called professional engagement, which basically just meant I could go away on tour for most of the year and it be a good thing and not a problem for the course. So I'd go away and do gigs and then write about them and then like talk about that in the lessons, and like it allowed like a lot of like reflection time on like the early side of being professional. And then basically write a load of music and then performed it for the recital at the end. So that was really good. And I guess in terms of what I brought from it on the classical side, a big thing was just like the approach to practice. I think I really learned how practice works for me over that time, and just in terms of like the headspace that I'd need to be in, or what it means to have learned something, things like that. And then, yes, I mean, the facility stuff was always very helpful, and the, you know, things like reading music and stuff I do occasionally use still. The tone stuff was big. The like how I use my right hand if I'm playing fingerstyle was big. And yeah, but I think the big thing was just learning how to practice. I think that's such an important skill, and you know, it can be very meditative and therapeutic. It's just a thing I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess that the approach to practice that's being discussed in a popular music program is very different than the approach to practice that's being instilled in a classical course.
Yeah, I think so. I think it went from spending lots of time practicing a certain piece or a certain, you know, technical exercise or whatever it was, to practicing things that like the whole point of them was to apply them to a very large point of your musical personality. It might be, you know, playing a scale in a certain way, which you can then use to play fiddle tunes or use to improvise or use to write music with. It was much wider screen practicing. But so yeah, I guess it's different in that way. It was less specific practicing, but I think also like the further I get from it, the more similar it all seems a little bit, maybe with the exception of like reading a score and replicating it. But I think at least headspace wise, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't study music, but I do feel like college is like a singular entity for me. Like I look back and I'm like, all those 4 years just belong kind of in the same thought. I'm glad you brought up composition, because I'd love to talk a bit about, you play in a duo with a fiddle player. Can you talk a bit about how you formed that group and kind of your role, you know, your many roles in it?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm in a duo or band called Spafford Campbell, with my friend Owen, and we've been playing music together since I was 16, he was 14. So yeah, a very long time now, and we met through this thing called the National Youth Folk Ensemble, which was set up to be like 20 instrumental folk musicians from across England would meet up like 4 times a year for residentials and do gigs and stuff. And those of like more than school or university or anything really, like those are still like my best friends. Like I'm not living anywhere at the moment, but staying with someone from that, and play with Owen all the time, and I play with Sam, who ran it all the time, and it's a really beautiful thing. So we met through that. And then when I moved up to music college, he lived in a town nearby, which was a nice change. We'd gone from living like 7 hours away from each other to suddenly like being able to see each other every week. So we started just doing loads more playing. It started off mostly being traditional music, and it's just got further and further and further away from that slowly, but sort of still with a heart of knowing that's sort of where we started playing music together. So at this point, I mostly play electric guitar in that project, and it's all music that we've written. And, you know, as much inspired by traditional music as it is by like Talk Talk and Godspeed You Black Emperor and Radiohead and all sorts of other stuff. Like, I think we just want it to be the project where it can be as like as unfiltered and as honest a representation of the music we care about and the properties of that music that we care about. So just trying to be really dynamic and trying to play really simply, but take a little tiny idea as far as it can, things like that. So yeah, that's really nice. And that feels like, yeah, that's like the driving like project for me at the moment.
Yeah, talk a little bit about your recording process together.
Yeah, so we're writing another album now, so it's a good time to talk about it. For the last one and this one, we started by writing as many small ideas as we could. So just like write a thing, record it, move on before you have time to think about whether it's good or not. So we'd like try and do like 10 a day or something. And then
10 a day?
Yeah, but they're not like proper things. They're like, you know, an A part and a B part are just...
I write like one song over like 6 weeks.
Well, this is the thing though. I'm exactly the same. It's like, we're so normally so slow, and we were just like, how do we get out of our heads with this? So the vast majority is absolute rubbish. But if, 10% of the things we write end up being good enough for us to want to then like work on them more, then eventually we end up with things that we like that probably wouldn't have come out otherwise. So that's kind of how we've been doing it, which is it's a nice way of working, particularly for instrumental music. So we did that and then, build it up into longer pieces and stuff. And then everything normally starts with like a live take of just the two of us in a room, and we try and make it sound as natural and roomy as possible. And then, now we're starting to... the first record was just acoustic guitar and fiddle, but now we've allowed ourselves to like do...
You've gone electric.
We've gone electric. We're sinners now. But it feels quite like freeing to suddenly be like, we can add things if we want to afterwards. So then there's normally a process of like adding careful extra things, whether that be effect things or another instrument or something, but always just trying to make sure that the live performance is still the main thing in the middle, and lots of like reamping stuff through amplifiers to make it feel like it was in that space if it's something added and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's really fun.
And you do tour a bit together and play, so I'm curious, now that the recordings, I mean, they're still fundamentally two people in one room, but you're talking about getting a little more experimental and adding some stuff. How do you find that then that translates back to when you have to perform live?
Yeah, it's been a fun challenge working it out. And what we've ended up on is, when it was just acoustic music, we never used monitors or anything. And we just play at the volume that we'd need to be able to hear ourselves, like just sat direct next to each other. So we've just tried to like build on that as much as possible. So there's normally 3 amplifiers next to us on stage. I'll have the 2 outer ones, which is like a little bit stereo, just to like feel a bit more piano-y, so like the fiddle can sit in the middle of that. And then through the center we have any effects that Owen is using, and also the drum machines go through that amp as well. So, and the amps are all like small little 5-watt things, so they can still be at the volume we would play acoustically. So yeah, there's lots of like electronic stuff going on and various pedals and things, but we're trying to present that in a way that still holds on to the things we really enjoyed about it just being fully acoustic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's stay there and let's talk a little more about gear. So what guitars are you currently playing?
The main electric guitar is a parts guitar that me and my friend Ryan put together. It's kind of Jazzmaster shaped and has a few little hollow pockets in, from a funny website called guitarbuild.co.uk. And it's got 2 P90s and a big Telecaster neck. I always like big necks because I guess from the classical guitar stuff, I just find it way more comfortable. Yeah, and that's the main guitar I play for most things. And then the acoustic guitar I mostly play at the moment is a filed, which is made in the Lake District in the northwest of England, by an amazing man called Roger Bucknell. He made incredible guitars in the 70s and 80s, and then stopped making them entirely to make snooker cues for a while, and became the world's best snooker cue maker. And then luckily has come back to guitar making. And that's a beautiful guitar. It's kind of dreadnought sized, but a bit more suited to softer playing, and has a 13 fret neck joint, which I guess is kind of rare. Yeah, that's a really gorgeous guitar. And I'm about to get a guitar made by Turnstone in Sussex. Amazing woman called Rosie Hayden-Rich makes those. So that's going to be exciting. Yeah, those are the main things at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, and then kind of effects wise, what have you been drawn to the most?
Yeah, I guess a big thing for the last couple of years has been the Game Changer Plus pedal. I don't know if you've seen those. They look like big piano sustain pedals. And I really love anything that can open up the possibilities of what a guitar can do, more so than just like, here's a cool chorus sound or whatever. It's the stuff that really excites me. So that's been a big one. For a long time, the microcosm was a big thing, but I think I'm slightly getting tired of that now. It's getting a bit overused. But then again, finding new ways of like adding other effects with it in parallel to make it a bit less overused is good. The JHS color box is a big one. I use that to basically mean I can play at any volume, but with the amount of compression and like slight breakup I want to. It's really helpful, and the crazy fuzzes in it are great. I really love that. And the new thing I've just got is a slow Loris. Have you seen that pedal? Yeah, I love that so much. It's a slapback that has a like dynamic vibrato in it. So if you play softly, it's just a snapback, and then if you play harder, the slap gets slightly longer, and it's a vibrato on the main signal, which is just a really creative thing, and it just allows you to play very dynamically. I think it's really beautiful. So I guess those are the main things.
Great. Well, all of that is a good lead up to, your live sound when you are side manning these days, because the way we got connected is you've been currently on tour playing with the artist Dove Ellis. I got to see the show the other night, and it was crazy and amazing. And you're definitely incorporating all these things you're discussing, in that setting. So can you talk a little bit about how you got connected to those boys in that project? Let's start there, and then I have some follow-up questions. Yeah. How'd you get connected?
So we sort of went to the same music college. They were in first year when I was in fourth year. So we met briefly then, and then a few years later, everyone ended up moving to London, and they asked me to come and play a little bit on his album when they were recording it. So I played it was like an hour and a half, and I played like 2 songs, and it was really good fun. I did sort of like Dave Rollins-esque lead guitar in one, and then got like a big noisy, like very heavy bit on another one. It was great. So we did that, and then a few months later he asked if I fancied doing some shows. And I was I was delighted. It was so exciting. It's nice to do something outside of the folk world, and it's so nice to be doing something in that sort of like, I guess, popular music world that's like really holds on to all the properties of music that I still care about. Like, it's so far from like tracks and in-ears and everything. There's loads of room for improvisation, and everyone on stage is an amazing player, and also it's just like such a joy watching him do what he does every night. Like, I think he's the most incredible singer and songwriter. We all, like, at the end of every show he does a few by himself, and still every night the whole band like goes out into the audience and watches it because we just love it.
Yeah, if people listening to the podcast are unfamiliar, I highly recommend checking out this record that came out earlier this year or late last year. Late last year. It is amazing. It's like if Jeff Buckley and Rufus Wainwright and Tom York all came together, but were also Irish and and wrote and the songs are incredible and crazy. So highly recommend. But what I'm most interested in here, to hear about your experience is like, what we've covered a lot is that you grew up playing traditional music, you grew up playing with musicians who are much older than you, who are upholding, very traditional musical values. And now you find yourself, in this more popular music realm with people around your age. And again, as we've been hinting at and saying, the music itself still has some traditional core. But it is in a pop world. It's different than what you've played before. So how is your approach to playing with someone like Tom? Like how has that changed you as a guitarist?
Yeah. I mean, it's been really fun. I guess the nice thing is there is like definitely a sort of chamber music element to the gig. Like there's saxophone and viola, and I've ended up playing like quite a lot of classical guitar on it, which is really fun.
Which is why I said I cannot do this.
Which is a really fun like new way of doing it.
You're back to your original college roots.
I know, it's mixing it all up. It's nice, and it's fun. Like a lot of the gigs I've ended up doing in the folk world have been like quite textural with lots of pedals being like the person on stage that like makes it atmospheric and stuff. Whereas this gig is like very unpedally for me in a really nice way, but still quite textural. So a lot of the like textural stuff, it could be like tremolo on classical guitar or just like using like hitting the guitar in different ways to get different sounds out of it, which is really fun. So that's been an exciting new thing to learn. And I guess the just the general dynamic is a new thing for me to learn. I'm so used to, particularly with Owen, if I get into like any distortion or anything, we have to be like so thoughtful about how we keep that at a level where we can still like play together at the right sound, so the guitar doesn't get way louder or the fiddle doesn't get way louder or whatever.
Right, because it's just in the duo, it's really just the two of you. There's not anything else padding it. Yeah.
Really, yeah. And everything, we try and keep everything as much as possible to like an acoustic level of decibels on stage, I guess. Whereas this is like a whole new understanding of like what needs to be louder, what needs to be quieter in order to cut over the drums and like another guitar player and a piano and stuff. So that's really fun. It's been it's a real joy to do it, and a real joy that I can do it in a way that still feels like I'm not like compromising anything that I'd want to be playing, even if it is like parts that he's written before.
It does kind of seem like the perfect marriage of the various things you studied in college coming together, especially since you are, for a lot of the set, playing classical guitar, which is kind of the irony of it all.
Yeah, it is funny. And it's funny that that's after like studying lots of classical guitar for a long time, I end up playing that instrument, but in a totally different context. And there's just lots of like creative room for the classical guitar stuff. Like, that sound within a band, like with a drummer and stuff, is I guess something that's not been explored like a whole lot in comparison to like acoustic guitar and electric guitar. So just like working out like what sounds and what dynamics and what techniques like can come across enough to like make sense in a live context is really good fun. And yeah, I guess also just like, apart from a few of the electric guitar songs, I end up just being fingerstyle for the whole gig, which is relatively rare for me. Which definitely like adds another like level of connection to the instruments and the dynamics and stuff, which I guess really makes sense with the playing with other acoustic instruments on stage. Yeah, it's great. I love it.
It's great. Yeah. So like I said, I just saw this gig. It was in New York. It was amazing. Can you talk a bit about, what else you've got coming up this year, or at least what you can talk about?
Yeah. So who else am I playing with? tomorrow I'm off on tour with Sam Sweeney, that fiddle player I mentioned before, which will be a trio with Ben Nichols on double bass. That's going to be really fun. And then me and Owen have some nice gigs. We're going to Germany at the end of this month. And then we're doing a big UK run at the end of the year into some more European stuff next year. We're doing a nice tour of Belgium and the Balkans and a few other places. It's going to be really fun. It's really exciting to take that music outside of England, really. We've only just been to Ireland for the first time and played in Scotland for the first time last year, so it's really exciting. And I'm playing with a singer called Emily Portman, who writes really amazing music. She's very inspired by old Norse and English folk tales with the music she writes. So it's very story based and just like really considered music. So that's really fun. And that's a trio with me and a cello player called Lucy Rebus. A few nice gigs with Martin, a bit with a singer called Sam Lee, who's he's like, I'd say like as much of a musician he is as environmentalist and nature man. He knows everything about nightingales. So that's always really interesting too. We go to like very like unusual gig spots with him. And
what's an example of an unusual gig spot with Sam Lee?
Oh, we've done all sorts. What have we done recently? We did a bizarre one in like the mountains in the middle of nowhere in Spain last year. We did Oxford Real Farming Conference, which, not to be confused with Oxford Farming Conference. All sorts of stuff. No, he's a really inspiring person. So those are always really fun gigs, and that's very pedally for me. So that's nice. I normally get through about like 7 or 8 songs before you can hear like the attack of a note at any point. So it's a nice like, different challenge. All sorts. Keeping nice and busy, but all stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like you're quite in demand.
I don't know. It's fun.
If if somebody listening to this podcast was wanting to get into, traditional playing, where would you direct them? Like what were some resources that were good for you when you were a teenager that was interested in it for the first time?
Yeah. I guess the main thing I'd say is just like find your local session. A session for people that don't know is just a group of musicians meeting up normally in a pub. And someone will start playing a tune and everyone will join in, and then you'll play it around a load of times, and then someone will start a different tune, and then between sets you're just at the pub having a nice time. And they're typically like very welcoming to any sort of person and any sort of level of ability. If it's daytime, like you often get like loads of young people there and stuff. So I'd just go and play it. I think the nice thing with the guitar in traditional music is that like it's a totally fabricated tradition. Like it came into folk music in the 1960s, basically, a little bit before, but not very much before. So anyone that tries to say there's like a right way of doing it, it's pointless, So it's a joyful thing that you can find your own way of doing it, and that's as traditionally accurate or ever as doing it any other way. So I'd go and do that, and I'd listen to as many recordings as you can, and I guess just on the guitar, I think it suits a certain personality type. So I think like if you're someone that likes, like in a conversation, if you're like not necessarily like introverted, but like if you just like being in a supportive role and like just like seeing what someone else is being really good at and just like trying to dedicate what you're doing to making that better, then it's a really fun thing to do.
I feel like that's a great place to end.